Coming up next, SPNN's Neighborhood News. Hi, I'm Sherine Onukwuwe. Welcome to SPNN's Neighborhood News. On this program, we interview district councils and we go out in the neighborhood and find out what people are talking about. St. Paul has a history of strong community and neighborhood participation. The district council system is a big part of that. There are 17 councils, each representing a different area of St. Paul. The district councils are independent organizations, but they do get some funding from the city as well as other sources like grants and donations. Much of the work being done by the councils is done by volunteers, community members, who want to participate in the life of their neighborhood and their community. On today's program, we talk with representatives from District Council 4, 12, and 15. Stay tuned. We're here talking with Jesus Ramirez, an organizer in the Dayton's Bluff area, as well as Deanna Abbott Foster, who is the executive director of District 4, District Council 4. Welcome.
Well,
Hello.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Glad to be here.
Hi. I want to just talk about the responsibilities of a district council so people really understand what district councils do. And then if you could also talk about the area, what defines District 4, Dayton's Bluff area.
Well, district councils are part of 17 organizations that are throughout St. Paul, and they are under contract. They're all nonprofit organizations, and they're under contract with the City of St. Paul to work with civic engagement and district planning issues, including engagement of residents around economic, housing, and other issues that impact communities, in particular crime prevention, and we work a lot with city departments and with the police and other things. Many of the councils also do other work that gets funded from other places. And that is true in District 4, which is the Dayton's Bluff Community Council.
Okay.
Now, Bluff, basically Dayton's Bluff is on the bluff above the downtown St. Paul. So we are primarily south of the Phelan Corridor and generally go out to Johnson Parkway and to the borders of the city to the south, which includes Mounds Park and that area on the other side of 94. So it's all along 7th Street, East 7th Street, and places south.
Okay.
Graphics are, there's a lot of different cultures that are here that make up what is Dayton's Bluff. Currently, we have 60% of people of color that are in this community, and they range anywhere from the Latino community to the Hmong community to our Black community to our white community. We have quite a bit. We have now a Somali community, we have a Korean community, and it goes on. And the makeup and the development of the community itself seems to be constantly changing, and it's really, really exciting over here right now.
What would you say? I'm a former resident of Dayton's Bluff, Wilson Avenue, where I used to live. And I'm wondering, what would you say that the identity of the community is, rather than, the cultural makeup, but what would you say the feel of Dayton's Bluff is?
Changing. That's what I would say. There's a lot of history that's hung on a long time for the whole east side. Dayton's Bluff used to be the location for 3M, the 3M headquarters. So there's a lot of history in particular among generational East Siders. So Dayton's Bluff also has a historic district, so we're very, very interested in the history of the city of St. Paul and preserving historic buildings. And then in the last 20 years, and in particular in the last 10 years, there's been a huge influx of new East Siders. And they are people of color, and they don't have the same connection with the East Side history, but they're actually creating the future for the East Side. So I would say that we are a changing community, and that is both our strength and our struggle.
Yeah, and if I was to give it another word, would be tiawi. Tiawi means to move forward, constant change, without surrender or without turning back. And so what we're seeing right now is the makeup, as Deanna had mentioned, there's a lot of historical feel to this area. But right now, with the influx that's happening and the constant new change that's happening, there's an emergence, a beautiful flower that's blossoming on the east side right now, that we're able to see the different petals of that. And so there's a lot of energy around in that right now.
Okay. Well, if you all can talk about some events, some exciting events that you have coming up in this month and next month, particularly Jesus, I think you're working on Art on the Block. If you could tell people what that's about and what it involves.
Sure. So it's Art on the Blocks, plural, and what's basically trying to do is change the narrative or the current dialogue that's happening about the East Side right now. There's what's currently happening is that we need more young people to be out there doing some positive construction of what's happening in their own community. And so what Art of the Blocks is doing is utilizing art as a catalyst to kind of change that narrative and to be able to display the civic engagement that we would like to see our young ones be part of. And so in order for us to be able to do that and have them partake in something, they need to be able to experience something and participate in something that's going to be able to be engaging for them, something that they're able to want to construct and be part of. And in addition to, it gives to the experience of to the larger community where they're able to see them doing something very positive in the community. So art is that catalyst right now. And so what we're doing is there's multiple projects that are going on, one of which just finished with Battle Creek Middle School and Harding High School. The next one, which will be starting on June 25th, running through the middle of July, around July 10th, we'll be doing another project at Margaret Park. And at Margaret Park, we're going to be doing some murals that's going to be in conjunction with Seventh-day Adventist Church, and as well as Parks and Rec at the Margaret Park location. In addition to that, there's another project that will be starting up in middle July to about mid-August with Dayton's Bluff Rec Center, where we'll be working with youth as well. And so what this does is it brings out, whether it be a mural on a large canvas or whether it be an actual permanent fixture that's in the community, it's discussing and creating that dialogue or creating that discussion with the young people, trying to see what the theme is going to be about, whether it be civic engagement, whether it be cultural identity, whether it be the violence that's happening in our communities, but it needs to be identified. And once that's identified, then I'm able to utilize art as a way of being able to move forward that discussion with the young people. And so when that happens, then you're able to inject or at least plant the seeds for another way to be able to respond to the certain situations that are happening in our community. So that's currently what's happening right now. Those are those 3 projects that are currently planned out for this summer, but I'm expecting at least another 2 more.
And what do you see the impact? You talk specifically about art. Are you yourself an artist? I should have asked.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I have. I have been doing art now since junior high is when I got my first chance to I got a chance to meet a mentor, and a mentor was able to walk me through some steps. And then before you knew it, they were able to identify some ability in myself, I don't know where, but they identified some ability, and before you knew it, I was given the opportunity of which I want to now give on to other young people. And that was a chance to be able to show my art and be able to actually make an income from my art, and then be able to do so in a positive manner. And so when I was given that opportunity, I knew right away that it was my responsibility to be able to offer that back to the community.
If you can talk about what you think the importance of, businesses developing in a neighborhood add economically, and just, to the attitude of the community. I mean, because when you think about cities, that are struggling or facing their own unique set of challenges like Detroit, or somewhere where maybe there's not a lot of development happening, how do you think that impacts the community's attitude?
Well, well, when a business district in a community seems to be dying, that is a huge message to the community that the community is dying. And so it's like a megaphone announcement every day when the main streets of your neighborhood are not lively and filled with growing business. So that was really our thinking, that if we could liven East 7th Street, which really had been abandoned in so many ways, and yet when we looked, there were actually many businesses, most of them minority owned and operated, that were being ignored. And so that's why we put together this idea of really highlighting businesses and highlighting business growth. And we actually applied in 2012 for a Neighborhood Star program grant, and it was called A Million Will Make It Happen on East 7th Street. And that indicated we asked for $500,000 from the STAR program, and it would be matched by private investment of $500,000, and so it would equal over $1 million of investment, capital investment on East 7th Street. And we're in the middle of that. That program started in 2013, so we're kind of midway, and we have a number of projects that are very exciting, coming together with local businesses. There are a number of minority businesses who are getting the opportunity to buy their buildings, so that as it grows and the economy gets better, they actually will be able to benefit from owning their property and being able to stay in the community.
Great. Before we go here, I see the sign on the back of the wall, Market on the Bluff. Jesus, could you tell us briefly a little bit about what Market on the Bluff is?
Great question. So Market on the Bluff is happening on Thursdays from 4 to 8, and it is happening right next to Metro State University. And really what it's about is really supporting the local vendors, local artists, to partake in a good experience where we're all gathering in one spot and be able to share their commerce and be able to share their good experience with the other community members that are being able to shop locally. Deanna had just mentioned right now how to support your entrepreneurship. And if you have local businesses that are faltering, you need to create some times of space in order for those local members to be able to partake in some kind of enterprise. In this particular case, it's a farmer's market. And in addition to it being a farmer's market, you have wonderful crafts that are being sold there as well. Did you want to add anything, Deanna?
Well, we haven't talked about the farm products because they haven't gotten out of the fields yet, but in June there will be a lot of farm products also there. This is only our second year for Market on the Bluff, and it traditionally takes about 3 years to actually get a market going, but we have access. We take EBT payments and credit card payments, and we also have what's called market bucks, which means that if you have an EBT card and buy $5 worth of produce, you can get an additional $5 matching for free. So it's really trying to get locally grown healthy food into the houses and the mouths of our local residents.
Thank you so much for joining us here at Neighborhood News. If you could share with us your website in case people have more questions.
Yes, well, we're very excited. We're launching a new website as of June 20th, and our website is www.daytonsbluff.org. Visit us for great news.
Come visit us.
Thank you so much. Good luck with your projects.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We'll be back in a minute. Hi, we're here with Frank Jossi from the Highland Park District Council, number 15. Hi, welcome, Frank.
Thank you.
I want to ask a question about civic engagement in the neighborhood. How has citizen engagement, I should say, impacted how district councils work?
Well, we take a look at citizen impact on various issues, and our members are citizens too, so they have an opinion on various issues. But it allows people to at least have their voice heard. They don't always win in their opinion, but at least they get a chance to voice it before the district council, and often before people like Chris Tobert, who comes to our meetings, or his assistant, who comes more frequently. They get a chance to hear what the citizenry is thinking and their opinions of upcoming projects.
And is that pretty unique to how district councils elsewhere work?
I think in St. Paul they all work pretty much the same, and there's district councils in a few other cities. I was just in Los Angeles, and they have a district council system too that's similar to ours, although on a much bigger basis than St. Paul's. But yeah, it's ground kind of getting the opinion at the ground level for people.
So your District 15, if you could talk about what, when you think about Highland Park area, what does that represent, or how is that defined geographically, District 15?
Sure. Well, we are in the southwest part of St. Paul, and the dividing street, the border going north-south, is Randolph, and the river is the rest of the district. So as the river makes a little U-turn there, if you draw a line from Randolph to both ends of the Mississippi, you get Highland Park. And I think for a lot of people who aren't that familiar with the neighborhood, they are familiar with some of the things in it, like the University of St. Catherine, Highland Village, St. Paul Academy, Cretin-Durham Hall, the public high school, Highland Park Senior and Middle School. So we have a lot of high schools, one major university, and a really vibrant downtown village core.
Can you talk a bit about the emerging political issues regarding teardowns, tearing down houses, and how that's kind of stirring up a bit of controversy?
Sure, I think we're seeing that mainly right now in St. Paul, in McAllister Groveland and Highland Park, where people go into a neighborhood and they buy a smaller home, and it doesn't really function that well for their family. And on the good part, they want to live in the city. They don't want to live in Eagan or Mendota Heights. But they also want to build something bigger, and in some cases they want to build something much, much bigger than the rest of the neighborhood. And so there's been a concern among surrounding neighbors that, and they've seen it in a couple instances where the homeowner built a substantially bigger structure than the rest of the entire neighborhood. And in that situation, on the one hand, we don't want to totally tell people what they can do with their land. On the other hand, there has to be some regulation of it. And our council member for Highland and Mac Groveland, Chris Tobert, has been looking at some legislation that would kind of control how much bigger someone could build on the current lot size, and put some controls in place that wouldn't necessarily disallow them from building a little bigger, but would likely make it a little more appealing and attractive to the surrounding neighbors.
Well, what are the concerns regarding teardowns? I mean, aesthetically in a neighborhood, how does it impact the neighborhood?
People say, well, it's shading our backyard. It's so much bigger. It looks way out of whack with the rest of us, and a lot of it has to do with that. I wouldn't even say some of the homes are modern, although we've had a number of interesting modern homes built recently. That seems less the problem than just the enormity of some of them. That this guy just built a house down the street that's twice as big as every house around it. Some of these new homes are 3,000 to 4,000 square feet, when on that block the average home might be 12 to 1,500 at the most. So you're talking about both the height's higher, and the floor plate may be a little larger too.
When these different issues come up, does the district council really have the power or influence to affect change?
We'd like to think we do, and I think all district councils like to think they do. And in some cases they do, in some cases they don't. We worked with a developer of a senior housing project on Snelling Avenue that will begin soon. And He was very motivated to bring us all the plans, to talk it through. We sort of convinced him to change the color scheme a little, to work on some of the various issues involving how it's set on the street and on the property, and he agreed to most of them. Now, were the neighbors surrounding him really happy to see him move into the neighborhood? To be honest, no. But we felt that he had basically worked so closely with us, changed the plan based on some of our suggestions, and also it was zoned correctly. He wasn't violating any of the zoning code, and I think it's going to be a great addition to the neighborhood. And I think some of the complaints will drift away once they see the results of it. I think it's gorgeous. There's been other times where the district council years ago was opposed to something and the city decided to do it. And I won't get into that issue, but I think they made the right decision. So it's kind of, it depends. But we send our resolutions and let them know what neighbors are thinking in our community, as do the other district councils.
Mm-hmm. There is a big issue. I should not say brewing because it's been ongoing, but the longtime Ford plant that was on Ford Parkway. What's going on with that in terms of how people are reimagining, I guess, that space and what some people are saying they would like it to be or that they don't want there?
Well, I'll give you a quick progress report. Right now, all the buildings are gone, and they're begun to look at what they might have environmentally, what parts are polluted, what parts have to be remediated. They're also, I think they've begun to pull up the concrete slabs, of which there are acres of them. The entire site is about 140 acres, so it's quite large. And by my guess, and most people's guess, is it might be the most valuable piece of property in the state of Minnesota right now in terms of developability. It is in a great neighborhood. It's rare that there's this much land available anywhere in a developed metropolitan area like the Twin Cities. So this is a knockout site and right on one of the world's most famous rivers. So I guess the neighborhood, I think, is nervous. I think we're all worried about the density. This is not an uncrowded neighborhood that anybody who's driven through Highland Village at 5 o'clock most days is going to run into a traffic jam. If another 5,000 people live there, what's going to happen? So we don't know. Ford has not sold it to any developers yet. There's been several plans brewing for years, but a developer can take or leave those plans. But the city has several. There's a whole website devoted to plans for the Ford plant, everything from corporate offices to more retail to smart growth urban neighborhood to high density matched by kind of lower density housing. So all of those are on the table. A lot of studies been done of it, but it's still a mystery as to what it's going to be.
Speaking of housing, housing can also identify a neighborhood. If you could put into words the identity of Highland Park, what would you say?
Well, that's a really great question because in many ways it was one of the first streetcar suburbs in St. Paul. So as you move south through the neighborhood, you can see representative styles architecturally of the entire 20th century of American architecture, from not so much Victorians, which you see more in Ramsey Hill and Summit Hill, but more the mid-century. You can see mid-century modern, you can see Tudors from the 1920s and 30s, you can see kind of boxy 2014 homes, you can see Georgians. I mean, it's very interesting because as the community goes south, it goes almost decade by decade. So before you hit West 7th, you're into the 1960s. You're into ranch homes. You're into all kinds of variations on 1960s architecture in that section of Upper Dennis Road and places like that, which are quite appealing. And then there's also a 100-year-old farmhouse on Davern. So there are pieces of history. The high school, too, has a historic structure in the front of it. So, but I would say that we're not as old as some of St. Paul, but we're a good representative of how the city emerged first part of the 20th century and on through the 50s and 60s and now.
So talk about some of the upcoming festivals in both June and July.
Sure. We have a really exciting one on Wednesday, June 25th at 7 o'clock. We're calling it, sort of jokingly, Music in the Parking Lot. It is the great jazz singer Debbie Duncan is coming with the Jazz All-Stars, and it's a great group of local musicians. They're going to play in a parking lot at the corner of Highland Parkway and Cleveland. It's the Langford Chiropractic Clinic, and they're going to have an outdoor show there for an hour and a half. And that sort of kicks off the Jazz Fest. The rest of the festival is in Lowertown in Mears Park. So we're getting a chance to be the first one to have jazz that weekend. The second one is July 6th, 17th, 18th, the Highland Fest. And if you Google it, pops right up. And that's our big community festival. More than 60,000 people have attended throughout the years. It includes live music every night. One of the nights there is a fireworks show. There's an art show. On Friday night, it kicks off with a wine tasting and beer tasting. And most of the festival is in the community on Ford Parkway at Hillcrest Recreational Center. Now this year it'll be a little different because the recreational center is under construction. The library is being added to there, and so things are a little bit messy, but the festival goes on, and there'll still be bands every night. There'll still be classic cars. There'll still be lots of vendors selling food, and also kind of a kiddie park with rides. So something for everything there.
How do people get involved?
In the
district council,
yeah,
and then also the festivals as well.
The festivals, well, I think they're still looking for volunteers, and I'll put in a plug for the Highland Business Association, which handles the Highland Fest. To get involved in the district council, really, it's not very difficult, and usually there's an opening. We have 3 committees. Community Services, Transportation, and Community Development. And on those committees, each of them has a minimal of 2 community members. So people, if they want to get a sense of how a community district council works, they can first just get on one of the committees and just serve as a community member. Every year there's annual elections, and it's by district. So it's actually in Highland Park is broken into a number of different districts based on where you live. So you can run in your district, and there are also at-large posts that people can run for too. So it is an election. And how you win, generally, you grab a couple neighbors and say, come in and vote for me. And if you get 5 or 6 votes, that's usually enough. Some are much more contested, some aren't contested at all. But you have to have a minimum of 2 to 3 people vote to get you into office. So it's a lot of fun. I mean, I encourage anybody to do it. It's a great opportunity to be involved in your community.
Great. Well, what's the website if people have more information or want more information?
They can Google Highland District Council or hdc.org. Either one should work. We just redid our website, so it looks much better, and it really goes into a lot of detail on all the issues going on in the community. So there's reports in there, there's city documents, so we've really worked hard to keep the website as up to date as possible for people looking for A, what's going on in the community, and B, if they want to dig a little deeper into various issues to find out the details, they should be on our website. They can also call Kathy Kruth, who's our executive director, and she's very helpful and will help them out in any way she can.
Thank you so much for joining us, Frank.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be right back. We're back with Kyle Mianulli, and we are discussing District Council 12. Hi, Kyle. Thanks for joining us.
You bet.
Why don't you tell us a bit about where you are? I hear some background noise.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm talking to you from the District 12 Council office. We're located in the South St. Anthony Park Recreation Center. Right now it's summer and the space is alive with children soccer programs. So they have a lot of youth programming for soccer.
Okay, great. So, District 12, tell us exactly where that is and how those geographical borders are defined.
Sure. So District 12, or the St. Anthony Park neighborhood, is located on the west border of St. Paul. We're kind of tucked up into the corner here, where the western border is just past Highway 280, right along Emerald Street. It goes to the north past the railroad tracks up to Hoyt Avenue. So the University of Minnesota St. Paul campus is located partially in our neighborhood, and it goes to the east to Cleveland Avenue and to the south to Highway 94 approximately.
Okay. Do you can you talk a little bit about if there is, in your opinion, an identity about the neighborhood and how would you describe that as a feeling? You know.
Sure, definitely. So one of the ways that residents and we like to think of this neighborhood as kind of an urban village in a way. So there's a very close, tight-knit community. Neighbors on the whole are very active in environmental things, transportation projects, basically doing whatever they can to help green up the space, to work towards a more sustainable future. We also do a lot of work with land development. So our population tends to skew just a little bit older than some of the other neighborhoods, but people are very passionate about community here, and they're really close to one another and are very willing and eager to get involved in ways that they can help improve the neighborhood.
You mentioned a sustainable future. If
Mm-hmm.
you could talk about some of the projects that you have going on, one that sounds particularly interesting, community solar.
Yeah.
What exactly is that?
Yeah. So we have a group in the neighborhood that's a kind of working group of the St. Anthony Park Community Council Environmental Committee. And they are called Transition Town, which Transition Town is a broader, actually a global movement where neighborhoods, towns, and even cities across the world are really thinking intentionally about how they can improve the sustainability of their particular areas. So part of the Transition Town group in St. Anthony Park has been working very hard on a community solar array. And this is essentially an idea that up to 35 residents can buy into and invest in a solar array. It's a number of solar panels that would be placed on the top of buildings that have good solar exposure, so they get a lot of sunlight. And then so people invest, and it can be either equal shares or differential shares. People can invest more, some people can invest less. But they essentially started an LLC, a limited liability corporation, to make this dream a reality. So the LLC is established, and right now they are working to nail down a location to actually install the solar panels. And so we've been talking to industrial businesses. We've been working with the city to possibly get a solar array on the top of some city buildings, like the Langford Park Recreation Center is at the top of the list. But we've gotten a ton of interest, and people are really passionate about wanting to be able to have solar panels that are paid for and invested for by the community on their buildings. So now it's just a matter of picking one and going for it.
How do you think that'll change the culture of the community, the way that people do things by having, more sustainable energy?
Right. So, I mean, as far as changing the culture of the neighborhood itself, I'm not sure that it would have a huge impact because we're already very environmentally minded. A lot of people in the neighborhood are working on a wide variety of sustainable projects. One thing that's neat about this, though, is that it would really allow people to invest directly in a sustainable future. So there's lots of energy around solar energy and other sustainable initiatives in the neighborhood. But as far as being able to actually get involved and become personally invested in that future, this is a fantastic opportunity to be able to do that.
Okay, great. One thing also is going on with the Central Corridor or along the Central Corridor is something called accessory dwelling units. Talk about that and what that is exactly and how, what difference you think that'll make.
Sure, definitely. It's a very hot issue in the neighborhood right now. So there's a differentiation that needs to be made. The city itself is pursuing zoning code changes within a half-mile of the Central Corridor, which would allow for the construction of accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, is the abbreviation that everyone's using now. And that's a separate piece of legislation that's being pursued in the north part of St. Anthony Park, which is north of the railroad tracks. And there, a group of residents have gotten together and for the last year really have been researching other initiatives that allow accessory dwelling units to be built on properties and how it's impacted the neighborhood, what the sustainability factor can be from that. And it really started as a way for the aging population in the neighborhood to be able to age in place. So, when you're raising a family, you need a much larger house with a bigger carbon footprint that consumes more energy. As you get older and your kids move out to college, go out and start their own lives, you often don't need as big of a house as you once did. At the same time, a lot of those people have been living in this neighborhood a very long time and want to stay here as long as they can. But it might just not be realistic for them to do the upkeep and maintenance that a large house requires, or they just feel that they don't need that much space anymore. So instead of having to move out of the neighborhood, they would be able to construct an accessory dwelling unit on their property. And this can either be attached to the main residence, or it can be, like a small cottage house in the backyard or along the back alley. And what the idea is the aging people in the household would either live in the smaller ADU unit themselves, and perhaps their family can live in the larger one as they raise their own kids, or the elderly couple or person can stay in the main residence and have a caretaker live in the ADU so that they have that support close when they need it.
Is there also something being suggested or proposed to help people build these structures?
I'm not quite sure what you mean by that.
That if they're adding, so you're saying that someone who has lived in the community, say, in a house for 30 years, financially, it could kind of be somewhat of a burden to try to restructure your home or add on to it. Is there any proposal to, I guess, kind of offset some of those costs for homeowners, who might be considering that? Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Good question. No, there's not any proposal currently for financial assistance in constructing an ADU. That would have to be completely initiated and carried out by the current resident or someone connected to them.
Okay. Well, another exciting thing going on is the Enterprise project. So,
yeah.
So talk about that.
The Creative Enterprise Zone is an initiative that started within the St. Anthony Park Community Council. And it started about 3 or 4 years ago when we saw a big surge of construction ostensibly related to the arrival of the Green Line in the neighborhood along University Avenue. There's a building right at the intersection of University and Raymond Avenues called the Chittenden and Eastman Building. Historically, it has been an artist space. So there were a number of woodworkers, painters, videographers, essentially creators and makers of all sorts utilizing that space. It was rather run down. It wasn't, kept up, but in a way, that's exactly what creative people need. For instance, a painter doesn't need a bright, shiny space with clean white walls. They need more of an industrial, rugged space that they can sling paint on the walls, or if you're a woodworker, cover the floor with sawdust and not have to worry too much about that. So what happened is, it's a beautiful old historic building that was purchased by a property development company. It was converted into market rate apartments. We're very happy to have, it's now called the C&E Lofts building. We're very happy to have them in the community. It's really a beautiful building. There are wonderful people that are living there. But we were a little wary of this becoming a trend in the area, because historically, many different creative types have lived and worked here, and it's really been a hub of creativity and creative enterprise. So the initiative started as a way to preserve those types of makers and creative entrepreneurs in the neighborhood, to make sure that rising rents and new developments didn't push them out, because they just bring such a wonderful flavor and character to the neighborhood. So for the past 3 or 4 years, we've been working with the city, with the community. We have a working board made up of people working for nonprofits in the neighborhood, designers. Forecast Public Art is a big part of it. And we've really been doing what we can to establish this area as a hub of creative enterprise. We've been rather successful as of late in branding this area as that. For example, the city of St. Paul recently included us in the comprehensive plan. So this is now identified as the creative enterprise zone in the comprehensive plan of St. Paul. Just last week, we unveiled a new billboard project at the intersection of University Avenue and Vandalia. And it is a photograph from a very famous photographer who lives and works here, Alex Soth. He's appeared in the New York Times Magazine. He's done shows all over the world. And so through working with him, we chose an image that actually depicts a clothesline coming from a houseboat in the middle of winter. And the way that, the reason he says that he chose that image was, it symbolizes that creativity can flourish anywhere, which we very much believe in. And in a way, this billboard symbolizes a new starting line for creativity in St. Paul. So we had a big press event with that, and there's been articles published in MinPost, NPR, City Pages is about to come out with one. So we're really happy with the attention that that's garnered, because one of the continual challenges that we deal with is there really is just a huge plethora of creative people here making a living by their creative capacities. But driving through this area, you wouldn't necessarily know that. A lot of them are away from the line of sight, and there's not a lot of outward visual representations of the creative work that happens here. So this is really an initiative to kind of make the invisible visible again, and to really start to draw attention to this area as a destination for creative people making a living by their creative capacities.
The structure of St. Paul's district councils, the way it works, is pretty unique. How do people get involved?
That's a great question. So the first way that you can kind of get introduced to our work is by going to our website. For the St. Anthony Park Community Council, that is sapcc.org. And we are continually updating that with stories and listings of the latest initiative, what our committees are up to, and other kind of features and profiles of people doing good work in the neighborhood, as well as just kind of what's happening in general with things. From there, you can sign up for our regular e-news, which is an email newsletter that goes out once a month, where there's a lot of that same kind of content. It's really the best way to keep up to par with what's happening in the neighborhood. Now, there's also another website for the Creative Enterprise Zone specifically. So if that's the area of work that you're particularly interested in, you can go to creativeenterprisezone.org. And again, we are continually updating that with the latest initiative. We frequently do profiles of artists or artisans doing things in the neighborhood, as well as what we're up to with the work behind the Creative Enterprise Zone. Can I do a quick plug for our Facebook and Twitter too?
Sure.
In addition to both of those websites, we have a number of social media accounts that are very active. And that's a way for community members to directly interact with us and with each other. So we have a Facebook and a Twitter account for the St. Anthony Park Community Council. That address is SAP Park Council for Twitter. And if you just search for St. Anthony Park Community Council on Facebook, you'll find that one. And for Creative Enterprise Zone, we have the Twitter handle at Creative Ent Zone. ENT Zone, and we also have 2 Facebook accounts for that initiative as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Kyle, for joining us today.
Sure. Well, I was happy to be here.
Good luck with your project.
Thank you, you too.
We'll be back. That's it for this month. Thanks for watching.